All, and welcome to Painters Motivating Painters. This is a review video for July 2023. New viewers wondering what this video is about. Painters Motivating Painters is a Facebook group where people get together to share hobby tips and encourage each other to improve as artists. As part of this, we do a monthly review video where people can post completed works and get some feedback and constructive criticism from the likes of us. So we're going to get straight into it as we've got a lot of entries to go through tonight. Tanner Calder has his Tau. He says it's an Inquisitor scale. Did you say that? Yep. And it's also the test mini for your kill team army, and no particular feedback, so just kind of general feedback on the model. So yeah, I think it's a cool color scheme, which is like the main thing, obviously, because it's a test model. The blue-gray contrasting with the red, it's a good look. The basing is also very nice. Overall, it's got that kind of like vaguely evil, but not like super over. It kind of reminds me of like the Empire from Star Wars, which is not like by Warhammer standards. They probably are like the good guys, or at least could pass for it on a good day. So I think it's working in that regard. I think the weathering is quite effective, and freehand as well. I like the dust down on the hooves, the way that's integrated in with the base. In terms of the colors, it'd be nice to see more saturation in some places, because you got kind of a dusty kind of orange red and then a blue gray, which are both quite desaturated, but they're also very similar in terms of the level. Like if you switch the image into black and white, you'll see that they're almost like the actual value, how bright they are. It's actually very similar. You're getting a lot of contrast. They look much more contrasted because they are complementary colors effectively. But it'd be nice to have something where, say, for example, some parts of the armor, like the red, say the free hands up on the head, or like that antenna thing, or they're like a bit less weathered, so you could have um a bit of the true red, because it looks sort of like maybe it was a pure red color and then it got washed out by this desert sun and everything, which is nice. But it'd be good to see just like a few flakes of paint or whatever there in the original color to kind of tell that story, and also to just up the contrast in between them, because you don't have much. You got very contrasted colors, but you don't have much contrast in terms of level, like from light to dark in between the blue and red. So you could have the valley, the saturation do that. So if the red was more saturated, that would then kind of like up the contrast between the two colors as well. It doesn't need to be a lot, just like a little bit to show us, what the true color of that paint is or was when it was applied before the weathering all happened. And then on the green eye lenses, so on the face, and then I think he's got like some other little jewelly things that are in green. Um, you could do with having a dot highlighting those in either a yellow, green, or a white, and maybe like a little crescent on the opposite side of them. Or you could make them as like a saturated blue. Like there's lots of videos for how to do like a blue eye lens. And that could look good because that gives you an opportunity to cut down the number of colors so in your palette, and also have like a saturated blue, whereas your blue is very much a gray for everywhere else. And you could do like it would be a good chance to try out a gem effect as well, which could be quite a nice look to kind of top the whole piece off. But I think it's really cool. Like it's a great scheme. It should look really good in your army, and I like the way he looks, and I like the way it's been kind of weathered and it has that story to it as well. And the use of freehand is definitely a good thing to have for Tau, if that's what you're doing, because they have a lot of like big empty spaces on them. Good job. Thanks for submitting, Tanner. Jim.
Yeah, really cool towel. I've just painted a combat patrol of these in like a tan, black and blue kind of scheme. So I know how shallow the details are, and generally, like a lot of the sculpting is quite soft and quite boring in places. So I think you've placed colours really nicely to like make the most of that. So that's cool. This does look really, really thick though. So I don't know if that's you going backward and forward trying out, different colours and stuff. I'm pretty sure the rest of it won't turn out like this chunky where like a lot of the detail has been lost. But as Matt was saying, like with the contrast, a cool way to I played around with it a bit on some of the hero models is to try cell shading, because they have these like armor plates that are going off in different directions, and you can get really nice contrast in it by just picking three similar but lighter, darker versions of the same color. You don't have to do any blending. It's just this one's facing up towards the light, so this would be the brightest version of the color. Then this one would be the middle intensity of the color, and then the one on the back or facing down would obviously be quite a bit darker, and that works like for all of the armor panels on it. Okay, not the head because it's like a little bit more roundy, but yeah, just looking to cell shading works really nicely on Tau. So yeah, hope that helps. Thanks, Tanner. Okay, moving up, we've got Scott World, who's not asked for anything in specifics. So we'll just kind of explore it on the fly. So initial thoughts with this, it's got good contrast and textures, Scott. So well done with that. It's got a very sort of like moody lighting in general. But I like how you've like picked out the model as opposed to the background. That's quite a bit darker. So, the focus is brought forward onto the model itself, which is cool. I did think that the skin could do with a little bit more highlighting. It might just be like the angle of the photo because he's under this rather fabulous hat, which is shading him not only in real life from your camera, but also from the sort of ambient light, but still a little bit more and like hues in the face. So you could have like red in the ears and in the nose and in the cheeks, like blue under the eyes. Doesn't look like, I mean, he's going to be pretty small, but like a little bit more detail in the actual eyeball itself would be cool. But like the contrast that you've like got in the reds and the purples is really, really striking, and the like the separation of all of these elements is all very close and very busy sculpt, and he's got quite a closed pose, so it's all a bit of a challenge. But I think you've actually separated it really nicely, and like this graining and stuff that's going on the gun, and like the scratching of leather elements, really good. And this is selling as like a woolen kind of cape, if that's what you're going for. That texture reads quite nicely as well, I'd say. Then I thought of your metals are quite nice, but you could maybe introduce some more interference colors somewhere. So like there's blue on this one that's facing up, but the kind of the model is sort of got quite warm highlights. So those don't really ring particularly true. The one that's on the top rings better than this blue because it's got some sort of the similar kind of highlight tones very softly in it. So I think that looks a little bit better. And then I had the stones. So moving away from the model now to the actual like diorama thing, it could be beneficial to have a little bit more like streaking. There's a little bit going on, but like for the amount of foliage that's growing up these stones, I think the stones themselves could be a little bit more weathered. They look very, 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 very clean. So some more. So there's cracks and stuff sculpted in. So just like more of this, you can obviously do it, and it's very nice and it's very subtle. It doesn't steal too much attention, but I just think the stones look just a little bit too pristine. Like the ones on the floor are selling much better than the one behind. I'm not sure if that's actually. Oh no, it is sculpted. Yeah, it is sculpted. Can't tell from that because it's blurry. But yeah, overall, pretty awesome stuff. I like it a lot, Scott. So very nicely done. Over to you, Matt.
Yeah, it's really cool. Love this like Inquisitor model and the way you've approached him. He's got that kind of pseudo historical kind of feel to him. I love the way you've done his pants in particular, his trousers, his pantaloons. They look almost like velveteen or like some sort of really glossy fabric, which is kind of appropriate. Those kind of slashed poofy pants were very ostentatious for the day. I think you could have the purple be a bit more saturated on his plume on his head just to match that. I mean, obviously they're different fabrics and that kind of thing, but it's just that I think that purple leg that he's showing off it's a bit too eye catching maybe. So if you had the purple and maybe the orange, if it had like a more of a glistening sheen to those feathers, that might kind of even things out. It's not like completely out of balance, but it's just that the kind of brightest point it appears is kind of down at the bottom. And his boots look amazing. I love the way you've done this kind of the readers being kind of black leather that's all been worn, and it's kind of like all the places it's folded and stuff. It's all crackled up and it looks great. And on the diorama parts, Jim's right that the bricks looks like you did like the bricks are all painted perfectly, and then you applied weathering through physical materials, and then that doesn't sort of make sense in that the rocks would get like minor algae and stuff growing on them before they would get like big patches of it everywhere. And I would probably, it's hard to tell from the photos, but I'd probably reduce the saturation on the green on the moss because it's very bright compared to everything else in your environment. And it looks like, it's not in the same kind of environmental light, like, because everything else is slightly grayed out. So I'd just go over that with like a brown or gray wash or something, and just because the tone of that kind of moss product that you've used is very it's just a very strong green, whereas everything else is a bit more muted to be in keeping with the setting. But yeah, great looking piece. Thanks for submitting, and we'll see more from you in future, I hope. Okay, Caleb Chandler has this apothecary, I think. In is it a blood angel? I don't know, some sort of space marine. It's a cool scheme. I like the white and the red really works with the whole, like, his job is he is a like doctor, so that kind of is appropriate. Uh, and could use a chipping and weathering to make the armor much more interesting because you don't have a huge amount of like range of like light values on the white, but I think having all that chipping kind of uh, does a lot of work in terms of breaking up the shapes and making it look more real and more interesting. And it's very nicely done. You could have more kind of weather and wear in other areas. Like it's very noticeable that, say, his eagle wings, the red parts, like none of the red parts have any kind of chipping on them, which is weird. Especially like you look at his chest, he's got like massive amounts of chipping in the bottom right hand, and then the eagle thing is just perfectly fine. And similarly, his tabard, which is like meant to be like fabric or something, then his legs, like his legs are battered to bits, and then the fabric piece is like perfectly pristine. So that's definitely an opportunity to just apply weathering there. You could do something where that could weather to a different color, where it could have like white flakes under it or something, and then the cape bit could have like holes and little grapes and stuff in it. There's also a very, very strong shadow. It looks like you did a wash and it kind of pooled too much in his tabard part. So I'd go back with the base color and just thin that out because it's too thick of a kind of a black line in between there. Um, and then on the other parts of it, I'd say maybe just pick one color for your kind of accents because he's red and white are his main colors. Like white technically doesn't really count. So you can get away with other things, but you've got kind of yellow on his shoulder pad, and then you've got a yellow green for his canister thing, and then you've got a blue gray for his spotlight. So I'd probably do them like all kind of more in the one. Like if it's meant to be red, yellow, and white, give him like a pale yellow spotlight, and have kind of you could have a very slightly greenish yellow for the canister thing, but there's no real reason it couldn't just be yellow as well, just to make things a little bit tighter. Generally, like less colors is often more, especially for parts that are kind of asymmetrically spattered around the mini. Um, and yeah, and more weathering on the gun as well, because again, that's got the same issue where it's not weathered at all. Because I think the way you've done the chipping, it even there was something that was just a bit off to me, and I was like, oh, it's normally that there's no kind of it's either not random enough or too random, but I think you've got it pretty spot on. Like it's very much on the edges, and it looks kind of like it's coming from a direction that would make sense for all the pieces. But it's the fact that then like his arm is all chipped up, and then the thing he's holding is perfectly fine, which doesn't really gel with kind of the way what we expect to see in the mini. But yeah, great work, Jim.
Yeah, I thought this is nice overall. Like it's separated very nicely, and I'd love to see nicely battered Space Marines. I think they look better when they're weathered quite heavily. I thought with this one though, you could vary the weathering. This looks a lot like mud splatter rather than chipping to me. Now this is really hard thing because it's on white armor, so you kind of have to reserve pure white for like the really, really highest highlights. It looks like this is pretty much painted in the highest white that you've got, and then obviously you've shaded it and then weathered it. But really what you need to be doing is picking out the under so if there's like a black line as like a dent or a scratch or something, underneath it needs to be a very, very pure white to sell it and give it depth. But obviously when you're doing it on white, that's going to get lost. So you may have done it and we just can't see it. So a trick is really to not paint anything truly as bright and brilliant white as this. Use greys and slowly bring it up, and only use the very, very highest white for like edge highlights and scratching and like specular reflections, that sort of thing. But that's kind of picky. I mean, we haven't got a like a quality that you're going for here. Like if this is for the table, I'd be stoked with it. It looks great. But just to take it that little bit further, like for the chipping, that's what I'd say. But like all the other details and stuff, as Matt said before, yeah, totally agree with that. And I like what you did with the blood on the base as well. Just want to call that out. That looks cool. Looks like he's been very busy trying to fix somebody, was successful, and now he's gallivanting off, blowing the crap out of Tyranids again. So happy days. Nice work. So I hope that helps, Caleb. Thanks very much. Okay, moving on up to Christian, who's got a wolf. It's the second one I've done and a definite improvement to it. Okay, cool. So I like the colours that you've used on Mr. Wolf himself, like bringing a two-tone into fur really, really helps. So like having this face a different colour and like a little bit on the feet and the tail. More, I think, would be good. Like, it looks like he's got like the lighter tone underneath him as well, but more would be nice. This is a particularly, should we say, loose sculpt of fur. They're never good. It's really, really hard thing to do. So you've done the right thing with doing the pattern, absolutely. But I would go a little bit further and vary the red with things like washes and dry brushes. You can even sort of stipple or freehand or like patterns into it, like brindle pattern or something like that. Just to vary it a lot, because it's very much the same thing over and over. And although you've done it nicely with the feet, tails, and face, I'd go a little bit further with it. Great work on the base, really nice. A little bit glossy in some of the cracks and crevices, some places, so you could matte that down a bit maybe. But all in all, really, really nice details on the base. What else did I have here? Yeah, a little bit more greens perhaps in the rock of the. It's a bit too grey, like just grey. So there's a little bit going on with like the browns, but maybe like include a little bit more, like where water is running down in these cracks, it would collect in like rivulets, and you get a little bit like of algae or something growing up it. But again, minor thing. Then the next thing I had was that the eyeballs themselves were a little bit flat with that yellow. So you could jazz that up a little bit with shading, and he also needs like the I know it's tricky to do because it's very small. Like the white. What will instantly make this feel a lot better is just having that tiny little white pinprick somewhere in the eyeball. So it doesn't need to be like perfectly in the middle of the black bit. It can even cross over into the white a little bit, but I'd come in from this way and do it in that top right hand corner. So if you can get it just in the black, that's fine, but it needs to touch the black. It can touch the black and the yellow, but it can't just touch the yellow, if that makes sense. It doesn't sell quite as well. And then on the other side, it would be in the same place. So top right, and that'll instantly give it so much more life. You'll see the difference immediately. So yeah, that's what I've got for you, Christian. Hope that helps, Matt.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. It's a very interesting like color scheme for a wolf type creature, which is nice to see, and it's just very like pleasing on the eyes, where it's got that kind of orangey brown and then that kind of cream, so it's all kind of a nice warm palette, and it's got that whole, and then it's got autumn leaves on it, so it all kind of works together, which is great. It looks like you had a little bit. Jim kind of touched on this. You had a bit of variation in the kind of color of the red fur, but yeah, you could definitely go further in that, like as in if you did like even a gradient where like his top of his back was like quite a bright orange, and then you have the deeper kind of maroony colors then below it, and then the white in the belly or the cream in the belly, because when you then shade it and like you could use the same wash over it all and then dry brush it all, like the contrast between them is going to be a lot less. So it might look like at first glance, oh, I've got an orange and then I've got a red here, and they look very like they're not working together. Once you got the additional layers on, that'll kind of disappear, and it'll just look like his top, his back, and his shoulders are just kind of the same color, but it's just a little bit better lit. So that's just something that you can try out for yourself next time around. It's really cool, and definitely great to see the improvement between the models. Keep up the good work. Matthew Young is next with some Night Haunt fellows. No specific feedback. I think they look quite cool. They're very close to the standard scheme of four ghosty boys, as I understand it. The black robes, they read as black or dark gray or faded black, whatever, which is good. You could have smoother transitions there, like you, so you can either do that by glazing, so you basically glaze over the so you have like lines where it's like goes dark, medium, light. And it's quite obvious when you look at it that where that is. And so if you just glaze one of the colors into the in between part of it, that'll kind of hide that line. Or you can use like stippling where you use like a really broken up line and then your eye can't really pick that up. And it just reads it as like a gradient where it's like they just blend together kind of seamlessly then. And so I check it. There's two YouTube channels you can check out. There's Jose Da Vinci, and he's really good for he always does this thing where he either glazes or he uses like little tiny hatch marks to hide those layers. And then there's Cujo Clean Brush. He has like a thing where he explicitly explains how to use glazing to like hide your lines. But either of those would be a good kind of way to just kick it up a notch. And then the OSL looks really good, like especially for if these are for gaming purposes. I love how it's like warmed up the whole area around it, and it's not like too over the top. And it works as well with the black, where you kind of got it goes into like there's yellow highlights on it, but it still reads as black. So that's really really successful. So I'd be very happy with that. Um, and then the bases. So one point for kind of improvement I thought was the bases are a bit chaotic. Like they come with these pre-made bases, so just be careful with how bright you make the colors on them because it gets a bit too eye-catching. I'm thinking particularly the guy second from the left with the sword down, and he's got all of his spooky ghost bits down the bottom, which means like all of your bright colors are like down the bottom, and he's like almost fading into the background, as you can see. So you could just be kind of strategic there, and like you could have it the smoky stuff fades to black again before it gets to the base, and then again for other things like the roses and stuff, you could desaturate those a little bit, make them a bit darker, just because you want the mini to be the primary focus and not the base, regardless of what's on the base down there. Jim.
Yeah, I thought these were really clean, well separated. Love what you did with the fire effects. Like that's some really, really convincing flames. Like we rarely see them this nicely done, do we?
Yeah,
On here, they are really, really, really perfect use of the colours in the right places. Like amazing, great work on the flames. I thought the black, like some of the edge highlighting, was a little bit chonky, like around some of the rips and holes and stuff. So maybe thinning those down would be helpful. And just textures really in the black. I think everything else Matt's covered. So just like a little bit of either stippling or hashing or dry brushing or something, just using like the actual raw texture of the mini itself, just to bring out a little bit more texture in the black would be really cool. But other than that, yeah, as Matt said, really, really crisp, really clean. They stand out really great. So yeah, nice work, Matthew. Thank you very much. Okay, now we've got Stephen with his Mephistopheles, fancy. Was looking for a really rich red on the robes in the first attempt at lightning on the sword. This is an improvement on the one I painted 20 years ago. Also tried for a subdued base colour, but very subdued. This has been my problem in previous reviews. No bright pink or blue tufts this time, yes. Any other comments, welcome. So yeah, I think you've done pretty nicely. Look at the difference here. So this is great progress. Really, really nice work on the reds. Like you get the depth of it from the shadows. So it's good shadow contrast. And how the red is brighter, like at the top of the model, as opposed to down the bottom, like where the light would be stronger hitting it. I think that's all quite convincing. Having said that, I would probably push the highlights on the tops of the folds of the robe just a little bit more, to give it that to give it a little bit more zing down there. Then I thought the blonde hair is way too yellow. Like this is yellow paint that's just been shaded. There's lots of good videos on how to do blonde hair, but basically start with a bone color and then introduce browns, and then if needed, very, very, very gently glaze a yellow into it if you need to, but never reach for a yellow paint when you're going for blonde hair. It just doesn't sell. His face is quite a bit more shaded and deathly than the other one. I think you had like a nicer palette of colours for the face here. I mean, he definitely looks a lot more sinister now, so if that's what you were going for, then that's cool. But it just looked like he was too heavily shadowed, like in comparison to this one. So you could just bring those highlights up, broaden out the mid-tones, a bit of detail in the eyes, just to bring a bit of attention there, because attention's coming that way nicely, like with these orange pipes going into the like the bone colored skulls. I've seen people do them gold or silver before, so I quite like the bone version actually. So yeah, he's then just got this really dark face, which seemed a bit of a shame really. Then I had the lines on these syringes, cool effect, but couple of them don't sell because the horizon line between the fluid and the glass is not sort of parallel with the ground. So like the ones that work better, this one, and this one, but these two aren't really working because that horizon line needs to be horizontal. That's why they're not selling. So this one would literally be going from that side to the other. You see what I mean? And you need to have some white in there as well to show like the reflection of the glass. That would really help. I think you were very successful on the lightning of the sword. That's got a very nice glow and crispy edge highlights to the sword, so I think that's a good success. You could maybe do a slight glaze on the inside of the hilt and maybe pick up a slight blue highlight just on the front edges of it. Maybe not really massively necessary. But you could maybe just push the white in the lightning a little bit more in some places. There's definitely some there, but I think you could just like brighten it up and make it hotter, especially around like the power nodes, like at the base of the sword. That would be super cool. But yeah, I like what you did with the black. That's selling, very subtle contrast there. That's cool. The gun looks really crisp and clear, so that's nice. I like what you did with like the wings on the shoulder pad. That's very nice. The black cape, though, when we flick it right back here, that does need a lot more contrast to it. That's very flat black. There's a little bit of edge highlighting that's gone on it. So use dry brushing or layering or something along those lines. Dry brushing would be perfect, I think. 50% of the surface needs to stay black. The rest of it needs to be going up into greys and whites and stuff. So yeah, I hope you find that helpful, Stephen. Matt?
Yeah, that sword is so metal. Like it just looks like literally it's ripped it straight off like an 80s album cover. It's great. Yeah, I really like it. I think on the little needly things, your green definitely could be a lot darker. Like you think about it, like a beer bottle is not that color of green, and since it's empty, it's not reflecting as much light as the other things. What I would do is you've done a really good job on these blood drops he has kind of around his waist. So basically, think about doing that. Like so, the red in the vial should be more or less like that, but maybe not going up to like yellow, just going up to like a white dot. And then the green should be that, but then in reverse, where it's like a very dark green, and it has like a small highlight in, like it should go to nearly black, like kind of chromatic black kind of thing. Yeah, no, great work. Yeah, it's definitely a big improvement over the previous one. And the size difference, like that is outrageous. To send it to a mate of mine, he was saying like, they always talk about like points inflation in Warhammer, but this is like literal like unit inflation. He's like twice the size he used to be.
So standing next to a dwarf of himself, isn't he?
Yeah. It's like a mini me. There you go. Thanks, man. Hope to see more from you in the future now, Stephen. Keep up the good work. Alberta, like for general feedback on this wizard lady, she's very cool. I like your color palette. It's got a very autumnal feel to it. I think you've got the skin has a nice like desaturated look to it. Looks like there's a very small hint of color to her lips. There could be a bit more. Like, I mean, I guess that it's quite stylistic. You want her to look kind of pale and deathly, but just like ever so slightly more, just so her lips can't be mistaken for just being flesh town, if that makes sense. Like they can be very cut similar, but depending on how pale the person is, but you want a little bit of a pink there. I think having her eyes just dark is fine if that's what you're going for. I think the skin on the guy has a bit more richness to it, to be honest with you. But that's because he's got all sorts of horribleness happening to him. Um, I think you have, in terms of your composition, the distribution of colors is good. The way you've got like the green on the left and on the right, that was a nice choice to balance that out. But I think you need to think maybe a bit more about the way light is kind of happening over the piece. You got very general lighting, which is fine. It's like a conventional thing. Um, but it doesn't really kind of tell a story. Um, and it doesn't give us particularly good place to rest our eyes. So I'm thinking particularly all the strips of fabric she has in her dress, like they all go from like kind of a brown to red to orange, and it's nice. But like the ones at the bottom of her dress are the exact same as the ones at the top, whereas they should be like more in shadow because they're under her and they're like behind the guy. I think her hood looks great, but in between, and the same thing with the guy, he's very well lit on his back where it's facing her. So even if you have this kind of general all-round light, once you have two objects coming really near to each other, you get what's called ambient occlusion, where just light can't get in. It's why like underneath tables, like in restaurants, is always darker because there's just like generally shadows cast into that area by stuff, even if you can't see like a defined shadow there. And that would just really help sell the scene a lot more if you had like her and she's kind of better lit in this kind of semicircle up here, and then it's dark in under her arm, and then it's lit up again by the green, and that would also help with the OSL. I think the OSL looks pretty good, but it's got that issue where it's in a really well lit environment, so it kind of looks weird, especially on the like you did the right thing in that like the OSL isn't lighting up his skin because it's facing upwards, but then it looks sort of strange that like the back of his head is almost, or the top of his head is like as well lit as like the front of it and everything, even though it's under her. Um, so yeah, I would just think about that a bit more because this is a really like I assume like a display piece. That's a kind of thing it's going for. So having some sort of dynamic, interesting lighting. You can think about it like in a film where they'd have like a spotlight on her and then like a light on him, and then it's a bit darker in between them. It doesn't have to be like, oh, lights all coming from above. It can be whatever you want it to be, as long as it looks cool. Is there anything else I want to add? Yeah, just on the base as well, just be careful with the finish. You've got like quite a bit of gloss in these skulls down here, and also on her dress, it's like I like the slightly satiny finish to it, but you probably don't want that in the shadow areas because again, it's causing that issue where if you have light in your shadows, we don't know exactly where we need to be focusing when we look at the piece. Jim, over to you.
Yeah, that was the number one thing for me. Really, was just the finish on the whole thing, and that might be why it's scrambling the eye so much to look at it because there is so much reflection on it. And these are things like the way they've been painted. It we can't really tell sort of what material it is because like the colors that have been used, these look like as Matt said, like autumnal leaves, and they do sort of look a bit leafy in some ways, which is why it's like a little bit confusing because if these are like highlights, then highlighting just towards the tips obviously wouldn't resolve in our eyes very well at all. So it's like, okay, so these materials are these this is the color of these. They get yellower towards the tip. So it's a little bit confusing like that. But I think if you mat it down and place shadows really really strongly where they're supposed to be, and then use the volumetric highlighting of the folds. There's a lot of work to do. Granted, yes, I think it would read an awful lot better because it's very very tricky to read. But it's been applied cleanly. I like the OSL effects, and it's just a cool piece overall. And as Matt said, like the balancing of the green, really nice. So yeah, there's a lot that's going right with it, but I'd hit it with a very very ultra matte and then push some shadows around in there just to bring some form and some sort of shape to the dress as well, because it's all just a riot of moving fabric and it's very tricky to read. So yeah, give that a bash and see how it goes, Alberto. Thank you very much. Then we've got Eddie. Eddie, if you're watching this, show us some completed photos, put them in next month. We can't review this as a whip, I'm afraid, this time around, so hoping you get it finished, buddy. And onto Alexis. So high quality speed painted army. Tell me what you think of the color scheme and the general effect. How can I improve it with a quick and easy step? No quick and easy step for you, Alexis. No quick and easy step at all. Because these are already Like speed painted, what? Shut up. That's amazing. There's there's nothing else to say. If that's speed painted, like the variety you've got, like in the bone spear things, travel in the blue. You've even got like interference colors in the armor plates, the separation and detail and variation you've got in the faces and the mouths. Um, Perfect execution of bringing like the pop magenta onto the base, but not letting it drag so much attention down there. And it's like, oh, bright alien pink tuft. I'm looking at nothing else. Like these are absolutely gorgeous, man. Or lady, sorry. um, Absolutely stunning. Like the brains, how you've even added like the contrast there, the shadow, and like the wet highlight at the top. There is no quick easy step, I don't think, to making these look better. Not the best photo there, but like that is like a group shot is just super. I haven't really got like a quick and easy tip for you. If there's one thing, I'd probably say like the carapaces on the top maybe struggle a little bit in terms of contrast. As I mean, all of the close-up shots that you've got don't really show that. These bits here, so it's very soft. A lot of effort's gone into these. But like from a distance, like on here, that's the one thing that looks like the least varied. But when you provide the close-up shots of them, they look plenty varied. So yeah, they're going to look absolutely amazing up on the table. So yeah, I'm going to stop gushing now, and I'll hand you over to Matt. Who hopefully he's got something a little more helpful to say.
I do, which is very rare because normally you can't be like, oh, here's a way to make something look better, but it's really easy. It's almost always going to be like more effort. Um, but yeah, I think these are super well executed. It's a super really like good idea for having a speed painted army. Tyranids are perfect because you've got basically two elements that you have to paint, and you got two really cool colors, and they look enormous. So great work. Here are some small things that you could do because obviously I think for your troops and stuff, everything is spot on. Like these barb gaunt dudes look a little bit like vague because they're quite a weird model, and you didn't paint the gun differently, which is what the studio scheme is. But if speed painting, so don't bother. Who cares? That's like Games Workshop's problem for giving you a model with like two heads or 2.5 heads. I would focus on I had to look these up. So the Screamer Killer, your flying Tyranid Prime guy, and the Psychophage big beetle dude joke. So just some minor things you could do on those because just like that's the ones that people are going to pick up. Obviously, the two biggest models, and then the general of your army should be the ones that have the most attention paid to them. So on the Psychophage, you could try doing like some patterning on it. So just like dots and stuff up the middle of it in a darker color, just to make it be like, oh, because it's so big, it has an extra, flair to it. It already looks quite cool with the smokestack and everything, but that's just something that you could do. Um, the Tyranid Prime, I think, definitely needs more of the purple because in this view that we're looking at from, it's very minimal. So I'd put some of that purple into the wing membranes just to make him more eye-catching because you want him slash her slash it, whatever it is, to be the most to draw attention more than other models of the same size, and the wings are a perfect place to do that. And on the Screamer Killer, I just thought that it was uh the magenta is very singularly focused on the head. Um, and I think you could, if you have an airbrush or just through glazing, just have some of that magenta color coming in like underneath the arms and like in the kind of crotch area. So you have like a center of the magenta and then it goes to blue, and then you have a bit of it like in your shadows, and then it goes out to the claws. Just because it's very like focused there, whereas everyone else has kind of more kind of an even distribution because of the way their body parts kind of worked out. And it means that when you look at your eye gets kind of locked on his head. So having like, yeah. But that's it. These are great. Absolutely immense for speed painting work. And like you've obviously put in extra work in the key figures, which is great. So there's very little kind of extra feedback that we can really give you on it. Good job.
Amazing job.
Alessandro, painting some sort of Stormcraft dude, I guess. I'm a bit annoyed by the hair. Can't figure out why you're annoyed by the hair. Okay. So the hair could have more like lines in it because it looks like it's just a big mass of, like, it could be a hat or something. It doesn't look like hair because it doesn't have any like texture to it, and it's all one color. So either add in lines, which would be kind of annoying to do, or use different colors. Like if he had, like, his hair was brown in parts of it and it's gone white like at the ends, or he has like a streak of white going through brown hair. Or yeah, just anything like that, or just a little bit of a variation in the kind of, you could do it. White hair is quite hard to actually pull off convincingly, to be honest with you, because it is a light color that then has reflected lights on it. So giving him like a salt and pepper kind of thing would probably make it a bit easier, if you know what I'm talking about. Um, like anime characters often have that where they've got like a mustache and it's got like gray lines and stuff in it, just because it makes it easier to do in a kind of a monochrome. I think you get away with it on the beard because it's such a small area. You're like, yeah, he's got a white beard. If you had like different hair, then that'd be fine. And then I think the red on his handle could be a bit poppier, or like it looks like it's meant to be red, the weapon haft that he's holding, but it's very, very like close to brown. So you could just pick at some edges with a bit more, if red is meant to be one of your colors, or just do it like in a gray, just to call out there's like these kind of cords wrapped around it. Um, just to kind of pick those bits out a bit better. Um, I like the way you've done the texturing on the blue cloak in places, especially in the back where it's very tight and it's got that kind of velvety texture to it. But I think you could be a bit more deliberate with the size of the marks that you have, because some of the marks are really small and really tight together, and some of them are really big and thick and like kind of stand out, like on the front of him, down near his knee, on his little skirt. And you need to kind of decide on one or the other. Like usually big thick marks are for things like rips and stuff, and then having like lots of tiny dots that are only slightly brighter is more for like the texture that's part of the fabric. um I think the one of the, probably my favorite bit of this is like the hammer. It's got this very cool like steel look to it. It looks a little bit like stone as well. If it had more like dark to it, it would be give it a bit more of that NMM sheen. But like I really like the way you've kind of varied the light in around these flat planes, and the way you got little dents and nicks and stuff in it, and like a texture as if it is a hammered steel. I think it looks really, really good. So I'd lean into that in future. It looks great. And I'm going to leave something for Jim. He's going to have to guess what is the thing I'm not saying that he's going to say. Jim.
Oh, that was mean. You set me up there. Um, yeah, as Matt said, directionality for the hair and using different tones was my first thing to say. Smoothing out of the NMM would help it massively. If you know who these people are, then great, check them out. So Darren Latham has got videos on doing like the Stormcast armor beautifully, and so has Juan Hidalgo. But his version is also very smooth, but he's got a very sort of choppy style, so he can make it seem a lot more like artistic, if that's even the right terminology for it. It's like painterly. That's what I'm trying to say. Like a more painterly style. So if you're sort of leaning more towards that way, then Juan Hidalgo's got some great videos on doing the same thing. So on the base, hopefully this is what Matt was going to say. More variation to the stone because it's rather too grey. So you can introduce any other colour you like, pretty much. Just do it subtly, wash it in, blend it in. You could also, I think this is just the sculpted base for this guy, so you can always add more stuff to it, like, grains of sand or some pebble or bits of cork or skulls, tufts, anything. It just needs a little bit more interest down there. Or I also have that this cape looks real. I think this is probably like the smoothest blends that you've got on the whole thing is on the cape. So you're clearly capable of doing it. Like this level of smoothness is what you need to go for, like in the armor, and it will look tons better. And also push the highlights up. Like they're much better up here than they are down here. I know it's like more shadowed, but you still need to have like some crispier highlights. There won't be as many as there are up top, but there still need to be more. And like the mid tone has just lost that like mid ochre like goldiness to it, so that's why the legs aren't really selling as well as the rest of it. So and and then about $100. So yeah. Did I pick up the thing you thought I would?
I thought you were going to tell him to black rim his base.
Oh, of course. I hadn't even noticed the base, to be honest. Yes. Black rim your base. Absolutely.
Maybe it's okay. Maybe it's fine. Maybe we just learned that you don't need to black rim your base.
No, you totally need to black rim the base. No, absolutely.
Do it whatever color you want.
Black must be black. Yes. Oh, what a sucker! I should have got that one. Anyway, nice work, Alessandro. Please come again and bring your friends. Right, on to Matthew now. Painted this thought a few days ago as a gift. We'll have some feedback on how to improve it further. So I really liked this. The armor and the cape looking really great. Don't see it very often, but like the shading of the metallics into like downward facing areas or tucked up areas, like you've really nailed that. And like this slight red interference color you've got on the chainmail is beautiful. Very nice. Enjoying that thoroughly. Great tones that you've used in the hair. Could maybe just push a little bit more shadow where it's occluding against the helmet. There's another like red interference there on the helm as well, which needs to be mentioned because that's glorious. The skin tones were pretty good. To zoom in a little bit. It could just use a little bit more the T highlighting, so that's like straight down the middle and across the cheekbones. Could just bump up those highlights a little bit more. There is some there. It's actually better from this angle than it is from the other side, so maybe it's the photo. Like here, it just doesn't look as varied. And then a little bit more like blue around the eyes, red in the cheeks, and red in the nose. But you know, there is some there, but I think you could just exaggerate it a little bit more. Like the rest of the armor is really great in terms of like the shading and like the shape of things and like avoiding the muscling thing. So that's really good. Then on to the challenging parts. So I thought the lightning itself could be a bit brighter, and it's kind of weird because it's such a thick sculpt. Like it just doesn't really look much like lightning anyway, which is a shame because the rest of the sculpt is so good. Like I think it's the weakest part of the whole sculpt. It's got nothing to do with you, obviously, but I just think it's a challenge anyway. And then the way you've painted it, it's almost like it's a metal rune that's attached to the hammer. So it needs to be an awful lot thinner for it to work, but you'd basically have entire elements of it that are pretty much white rather than like the travel of blue and then edge highlighting everything. It's just a challenge in itself. So I don't really think there's much else you could really do with it other than push more white into that lining to make it look hotter. Because the glow cast that you've got from it, like especially on the back, like this is really nice, like how you've got the opposing shadows going to it, the intensity fades away. I think would be the correct tone of blue for the lightning, but I think the lightning itself is too blue, which is why something looks a little bit off with it. And for once, it's not the actual cast glow, it's the source. The source needs to be a lot brighter because, as everybody well knows, you can barely look straight at lightning when it happens because it's so damn bright. So it just needs to be absolutely banged out with white, but also it needs to be sculpted better, really. There was one, I wasn't too sure about this OSL here on this thigh, to be honest, because it's the same intensity as what's on his arm. That's believable because he's well lit, and I don't think this would be getting all the way down here, and if it was, it would be hitting over here as well. Do you see what I mean? So I think just lose this glow cast on his leg, and you could even tone down, so bring down the darkness of the blue, like on the hair. Like it's kind of weird how it's getting this far onto his hair, but I think you can just about get away with it. But I'd make that a deeper tone of blue and then put some more highlights in it to show that it's hair again. because it kind of washed out a little bit. These wingy things, they could do a little bit more shadow in them, but that's kind of a minor thing. And then the last thing I thought, I'm zoomed in, which is why I can't see it. The last thing, typical Jim trigger on the base, is that sculpt has been dropped on that base, and thank you very much, done. You must come back in with like a texture putty or with like PVA glue and sand or rocks, something. You've got to get rid of this gap at the bottom, basically, all the way around the whole thing. Yeah, so fill that in with something, and get it painted and make it look like that's more settled onto that last bit of ground. And that'll really set it off. But on the whole, really strong stuff, Matthew. Very impressed with this. So thank you very much for submitting. Over to you, other Matthew.
Yeah, the cape is probably the standout part for me. I love the way it's got that really like glossy red feel to it, and then it's picking up the light, and it's like turning into blue in an extremely convincing way, which is very hard to do. So great work with that. And then the other little bits of reflected stuff in the armor is kind of like just the icing on the cake. Yeah, there's nothing you can do about that lighting. Like it looks like it's meant to be like blue fire or like weird glowy floaty stuff. Like you can't do anything about it. Like lightning's actually white and it kind of lights up the sky around it, which is where you get the kind of blue feel to it. But there's no way you couldn't make the center of it white because it is a 3D object, so you can't do that. So you can't paint the middle of it. So yeah, I think you've done as well as you could with what is given in the sculpt. But yeah, I definitely agree with Jim on the thigh. Like that thigh, it's not really facing towards the lightning, and it's way too far away. And like it's a cylinder, so if it has the strike would go the whole way down if it's actually facing towards that. So you kind of realized halfway that it's not. It works on the belt because the belt is facing up. But like, and again, if his leg was lit up by that, his whole hand would be blue, and like his shoulder and stuff. So yeah, I just get rid of that, make that just a normal highlight because it's facing out towards the sun. And I really like what you did with the skull, with the kind of like pigment powder worked into it. I think that's really good. It's like, and it's a nice kind of contrast between how shiny and pristine he is, and it's this kind of weathered old remnant of Surtur or whoever it was. So great work. Thanks for submitting. Okay, Caroline or Jayla, or possibly Sharon, I'm never entirely sure. Got this Goth rocker, looking for freehand. Is it too busy looking? Again. So I think the freehand's really good. The wad down the bottom, it's like super poppy. It's really eye-catchy, and it looks like actual graffiti. So that's like great work. So I'd say good work on freehands. And I think it's not too busy. Like I don't feel like the model is completely over cluttered, but having that freehand down the bottom when there's nothing to balance it up the top makes it draw a lot of attention down lower. And you've got like the swig as well. So I'd say what you might want to do is take, like, say, for example, his headband on his hat and paint that in that like intense kind of red to orange that you've got going on the graffiti. And that'll kind of make us look like down and then up and then down and then up. It looks like you did that, used those colors for his eyes, but his eyes are so small, it's never going to have that kind of impact that the flat area down here is going to do. So yeah, do the headband in those colors and like the eyes on his skull as well, and that'll make it a lot more kind of balanced feeling. It's not like super imbalanced, but it's just that would be my pointer, and it doesn't feel like super busy. You've got very limited use of other colors. If you wanted to do more freehand, I don't know if you said you wanted to do more or less, but if you were doing more freehand, I would take the guitar in the rear view and do a bunch of flames on it. Like you could just look up actual reference images of flying V's with flames on them. It's pretty common, and it would make sense, and you could use those colors again in the rear, just to give us something to look at there. But I think it looks quite good anyway. And then yeah, that's mostly it. I really like how you've done like the kind of purple undertone in the skin. It's a nice touch. There's a few little places where like his skin looks kind of like gray, like there's maybe too much of that showing through. I'm thinking like around his chest here, it looks kind of similar to the back of the neck of his guitar. So just be careful of that, because obviously when you mix green and purple together, you get gray. So you need to kind of and play around with it so that you bring out the true color, and then have the shadows be like, I don't know, maybe bring it up to like a medium green and then shade it down again, while still keeping like a little touch of that purple, because it is a nice like complementary color to have to your green there. And yeah, it looks really cool overall. I love his stage that he's on. Good work, Jim.
Yeah, fun little mini diorama thing. I don't think it looks too busy at all. I think it has some good strength. Like the freehand is really good. I would just settle it in a little bit though, just with a bit of like sponging or stippling or something, because it's very clean over something that's very, very dirty. So just subtly. I mean, this could have happened after that, that severe weathering had happened, but it still just looks a little bit too stark, one above the other. To be honest, I don't love the purple that's been used as a universal shadow color everywhere. It's kind of creating like the islanding effect on the skin. So it'd be cool to have it in like some of the really, really deep recesses. But if you do that, it still needs to be even darker than that. Because like it's not that far in intensity from like the low greens that you've got going on. And then to say like I'd definitely push the highlights a little bit further as well, and just kind of smooth some of the skin out, because it's a little bit like, I mean, it could be a bit of the photos as well, to be honest, because the lighting's not amazing. And the glossiness as well of it. This might have been like Drushi Violet from Citadel, which is quite a glossy finish to it. And it's not working particularly well in the gold, I don't think. I'd preserve like Reichland Flesh Shade or like Gulliman's Flesh, the contrasts, for like your gold washes, and then get in there with like like a really, really deep warm brown to get you deep shadows in gold rather than purple. It can work on red, but again, it's the intensity of it is a bit too high, and it needs to be darker to really work as a shade on the red. But all cool things to try. But I just think that using the purple on all of those three elements is a bit like it's a bit overpowering on this one. But I love Matt's suggestion about getting some more of that red up there on top of his hat. That would be really, really cool. But it's a fun thing. You don't see many of the guys that look like this. So yeah, watch out for pictures as well next time as well, because we can't really see what's going on like on the back of it too much. So like the lighting like from the frontal angles is so much better. But yeah, cool. Okay, thank you very much, Sharon. Let's move on then to Adrian. So decided to go with GoTrek. I had one already, but on a display base. We wanted to go for a legal one. The Brazier, he thinks it's a weak spot. Don't have any idea how to tackle this part. Use fluorescent paint for the first time. So let's have a look. Get in a little bit closer. So I like what you've done with the skin. First of all, I think that's a really nice, like smooth and quite vibrant skin color. You've got like some nice tones in there in like the shadows. It's going like very like ruddy red, rosy, and there's like varying degrees of it across him. So that's really, really nice. So balanced color scheme overall as well. Like the orange and blue is a great combo, and where you've used them, yeah, it's much better the second time round. So a little bit more shadow, I think, would be helpful in the beard. So pushing up into these folds, like where it goes under his moustache, and then like the undersides of like his mohawk, and then getting up to like where the hair meets his like chin. You need to push more shadows all up there because it's all very uniformly highlighted, and then you'd have more intense highlights kind of like in this section of the braids. As the light kind of comes down, it sort of catches along this lower edge on all of them. Same with like the mohawky part. So yeah, just some additional highlighting and shading for those elements would be cool. The brassiere on the axe, let's try and get a full on thing. Yeah, so it's not a bad stab at it. I think you've got mostly the right colors going on here. So what would intrinsically happen is like the outside, like the cage, like the shape would be very, very dark because it would be thrown into immense shadow. So that's kind of why it's looking a little bit washed out, I would say. And then in these recesses here, that would be ultra shadowed as well, as the light comes out and it's literally casting its own shadow to get into there. If the light was strong enough to get that far, I'd probably dial this back a little bit and bring this orange down to more um, like an orangey red, and have it fade out to like almost nothing, like to almost no effect before. And once it gets to this edge here, as you've done, it would be completely gone. But it needs to be like almost gone by the time it's halfway across here. Whereas yours is very much the same intensity until it gets to the end, and then it gone. So like a more gentle transition away from the OSL. Would be nice. It would also be good to have some more yellow white in there just to make the sauce hotter. So you've got too much orange, like right in the center. That needs to be yellow to yellow white, and maybe a dab or two of pure white, but not a lot. The less, the better. It's got to be there, but it sells better the less there is. Don't know why, just does. So hopefully that's helpful. I think you could put some texture in his pants a little bit. It looks like he's wearing spandex, and I'm pretty sure he wouldn't be. As handsome as those thighs are, pretty sure he's not wearing spandex, man. I thought the steel and the gold parts look really, really good. So nice work there. Even like the stuff that's on the floor, that's a bit like weathered, battered, and damaged and stuff. So that's really cool. There's a possible opportunity to give him like either some chest hair or some tattoo or some scarring or like fresh wounds or something, just to break the skin up a little bit. Not entirely necessary, but you could, just to add interest. You know, you got large, like I'm trying to say, like unadorned flesh areas and large unadorned pant areas next to each other. So you could do a pattern like a brocade or something on the pants, or like, you know, some sort of varying of colours, just to break it up a little bit. That's the only other thing really I thought that could, you know, just an opportunity to make it a bit more interesting. But yeah, that's all I got for you, Adrian. Over to you, Matt.
Yep. Good work. Obvious, definite, like clear improvement from the previous one. I think ironically though, you did actually do the brazier. It's not a brazier. That's a different thing.
Oh, my bad.
You did it better on the original one because you have like the dark steel frame around it, and then the light is very like small and flickering. So I think of like a lantern, like a paper lantern, or like whatever. It's gonna have a light inside, and then it's got a cage around it, and they're just gonna be much darker. Jim already said that, but yeah. So I would probably just try and do it like you did on the original one, but just a bit better. Uh, that would be the way to do it. You kind of, I think it got into your head, it has to be OSL and it has to be big, it has to be color and everything around it, whereas it doesn't necessarily have to be, because again, like the actual light source isn't that whole section of the axe. The light source is in there somewhere. It's like, you know, when you have a torch, when you light it, like the whole handle of it like doesn't light up. It's only the front end where the light is coming out of. Yeah, good work. And the dreadnought is like my favorite thing, by the way, but we can't review it because of the one you put up there. But yeah, boats are cool, or ships, as the case may be. Okay. Ordinary molasses. That's an amazing name. And Nurgle Marine. I assume that is what this is. So yeah, first of all, you're very welcome. We're always happy to review anything. Thanks for submitting. And you want to do it for display, and you want to do some freehand. Right. I have a note about freehand here. I'm trying to get the freehand even, yeah, on the knee pad and that kind of thing. Cool. And keep things consistent. Okay, and it's mostly kind of slap chop. Okay, so for display painting, slap chop is like kind of like a good place to start off with. But you want to do a lot more then on top of it, because you know the slap chop is generally like, you know, it gets you a good level of contrast to get your minis on the table. But it'll also pick up a lot of details, and adding freehands and that kind of thing from your base is a good place to start. It sounds like you're already on the right track in that you recognize you didn't have enough contrast in your base coat, and then you add the Black Templar and it kind of just all went to black. So that's good. It's great that you're kind of thinking about those things. That's going to definitely help you taking the next steps in your own work. I think that the freehand part, the eye itself looks fine. These things can be hard to get symmetrical. So one trick you can do is if you just draw a plus shape. See that people do that for like faces where they just draw like a line here because it's very easy to get that symmetrical and even. And then you draw, so in the plus, then you kind of connect the sides to make the eye. So you make a plus where it's like wider in the middle and then shorter in the top. And then you make it kind of like a diamond shape. And then you just curve it out and you get an oval. And then you can always come back in with your other colors. But I think it looks fine for what it is. The little triangle-y, pointy out bits are, yeah, they're going to be really awkward to do because first of all, you're trying to get the exact same shape 3 times, and you're trying to split like a 120-degree angle between each of them, which is going to be super annoying. So I would say, don't do that. Just try and think of like a pattern that would fit the shape a bit better. Like you've done it. It's cool the way you have this like shape within the knee pad that you picked out. You've got this kind of like oval within with the eye in the middle with the like the little arrows in it. But you might be better off just going, okay, I want 3 things because it's Nurgle, and then being like, okay, the actual knee pad is this, it has like a flat side. So you could put like a triangle, 2 triangles in the flat corners, and then like one over here, and that'd be way easier to get symmetrical because you're using what's already there on the sculpt, if that makes sense. Otherwise, you get into like stuff where you're marking it out and you're actually getting trying to get the angles or just getting really, really, really good at drawing. And it's going to be annoying because you're on like a 3D surface as well. So things get a bit more complicated and weird looking depending on what angle you're looking at from. So try to get like I think the eye works perfectly well. And other parts, try to get your freehand. Just think about something that would work on the surface that you're dealing with. And even if that doesn't make sense, if it's something where like a guy, like, because sometimes people get like torn up about stuff where it's like a guy and he has a cloak and has a freehand and he's like whipped it back like this. And they're worried about like, how would the freehand look if it was folded over and wrapped around this thing? And the reality is, no one cares because no one could tell, no one could figure out, no one's going to look at it and be like, oh, the 2 halves of your freehand don't match up. Um, so just make it fit the area that's in would be my best advice for you there. Um, and then yeah. Also think about kind of what color you're doing with your. It's nice to have like that you have these colored kind of edge highlights. But the question is his armor black and then these bits are green for some reason? Or is it like really, really dark green and we can only see the color in the highlights? Um I don't know which one you're going for. If it is meant to be like, oh, it's worn through and there's like a green underlayer there, then I would take like a white edge highlight or like a bone color and then do a thinner edge highlight on those to show that like that paint then wears away or that the highlight then bleeds out there. Um, if you're going for a like a green black, I just mix in like some like dark Templar or whatever it is, the green contrast with your black, and that'll also make it a little bit less dark, so you get more. And like in the shadows, it'll go to effectively green, or sorry, effectively black, but it's still green because like it's like very very green clothes or black clothes are often very just dark green or very dark blue. So you could glaze over this black if you want it to look green with a like a green tint. You'll still read as black, but it'll have a color to it. Um, but just think about whether it is meant to be green that's very dark or whether it's meant to be black with green edges. And that would be my advice, Jim.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. So when I do black Space Marine armor, which I'm doing a lot at the minute because I'm doing some Chaos Marines. So the way I approach it, I mean, I get that you're doing like the heavier metal style, with like drawing in, not just picking out the edge highlights that are actually on external raised edges. You're doing the internal edges as well, and this is long to do. It's so tedious and so difficult. Um, like, hats off to you for giving it a damn good go. But if you haven't already, consider dry brushing power armor before you do anything else on the model. Paint the armor first, but dry brush it. And for black, you would be doing it obviously like a medium grey, and then mixing a bit of white in, going a bit further, and then you would go to pure white to pick up like the high edges. And at that point, you would retry what you did with this exceptionally powerful paint called Black Legion Contrast, which probably covers better than a Bad and Black. It's incredibly powerful. I made this mistake many times. Don't be scared to thin them down even more with the contrast medium. I just used water in the end. I just like 50-50'd it. And if it was a little bit like too thin, no worries. Duncan knows the way. 2 thin coats, man. Hit it again. And it looks just nice. And then what you've got is like black, grey. Then what you can do is like take whatever this green colour was here, like this forest drab or whatever, and get that down to a glaze and then glaze that over the highlights and into the shadows. And that will give you like a much smoother feel to it. And it's an awful lot quicker and an awful lot easier than doing like the edge highlights. If you're here to practice like the freehanding and the edge highlights, then that's absolutely great. Just keep cracking it out. There's no way to get better at it other than buy a Raphael 8404 brush would be my number one recommendation, because
goggles.
And some magnifying goggles, LED lights, you know, all of that stuff. There really is no other way but to practice. But the Raphael size one really is a masterpiece for doing that kind of line work. So yeah, I hope you find that helpful. Do I have anything else, by the way? Oh yeah, your verdigris, I'd probably add a little bit more verdigris around like rivets and where water collects. That'd be super cool. It's nice that you've got it where you've got it, but then it's like it would collect here around this one. There's no reason it wouldn't collect around these ones at all. Even if it's just a tiny little bit, it doesn't have to be like all the way around the rivet on every single one. There could just be a dib here, a dab there, just sort of, you know, something on all of them. If it's got to that degree. Oh, my mouse has died. Oh, how embarrassing. Oh, no. Come on, baby.
Press up. Keyboard up.
Keyboard up. I've got a Mac. I don't have one of those. Yeah, so... yeah, that's all I got for you. I've now lost my mouse completely. That's bad. So anything else? Yeah, good work on the freehand. Just keep practicing and take the highlights a little bit further, as I think Matt said already. So yeah, there you go, my lasses. It's Jim now, and it should be my turn, but I'm going to hand you over to Matt while I go and replace my mouse batteries. So I'll be back in just a moment.
Cool. So next picture is from Daniel Liu. Painted this for a competition. It's like some sort of orc lady bust. It's kind of familiar. I'm not sure exactly which one it's from. Looking for overall feedback on what you would improve on. So first of all, this is really, really good work. It's really nice. I love the kind of skin tone you've given her. It's very interesting. I love the fact that you've used all these kind of warm colors in the gold and in her skin and in her hair. And then you have the blue for the contrast. I think that's really strong. I like the freehand, the way you've got this pattern on her clothes and the kind of tattoo work as well. And the way you've done her hair is probably like a big standout part for me. She's got that undercut, and it totally reads to me as like, oh yeah, that's her hair there where it's shaved down. You've got the texture in it, and it's the right color and everything. So that's really, really good. Like nice freehand work. I think it's excellent. What would I improve? Now that's a trickier question. Kind of depends on a few places what you're thinking of. So, her tattoos, assuming these are tattoos around here, and not like painted on, they could be like henna that's painted on. But if it's a tattoo, then it should have some of her skin tone glazed into it, because tattoos are like slightly under the skin. Unless they're very, very new, they're not just going to be pure black. And if they are very, very new, they're going to be kind of shiny. So I would add like a thin glaze of the skin tone over the tattoos, or actually have the skin tone in the tattoos when you're painting it up. If it's meant to be like henna or like war paint or whatever that's painted on, I would highlight it so it has like a shine on it. Yeah, I think I'll pass you back to Jim, and then I'll finish off at the end.
Okay, so no idea what you just said, but yeah, I'll skip the blurb because clearly that's already been done. So competition standard we're going for. So this is great contrast on the skin and the fabrics. Firstly, very much enjoying that. Like this brocade pattern on like the orange tunic thing is wonderful. So props to you for that. Like, great hues in the skin. It could use probably a bit more smoothing in places, like especially for competition. You know, if this was display, then I think you're pretty much nailing it. But a little bit more smoothness in it. I mean, you've got great values. This part of the shoulder here, this brown bit, just looks really, really unnatural. Like, I don't know if that's skin or if that's like I think it is skin, like judging by the bust itself. Like, that's not a piece of fabric. So that's just like really weird, like, because the light's coming from like the 10 o'clock angle. Like, this would be really highly lit. It's a cylinder, and then it'd be falling away to shadow. So I don't really get why that's so heavily shadowed. Same for this part of the breast here, like the lighting angle, that would be collecting an awful lot of light across it there. So there's just a slight juxtaposition there with the shadow. I heard Matt talking about tattoos a minute ago, so introducing some blue tones, glaze over with the blue, with the skin tone, and then obviously highlight it as well because it looks a little bit flat. So that would be grand. Like, the hair is really, really nice, like flow to it, very, very smooth. But it needs more individual strands picking out, like with highlight or indeed with shadowed ones. So you need to get in there and pick it out individually. Very long process, but very rewarding. So get in on that. And then I had for the shaved part of the head, you could maybe do a little bit. There's some happened, but I think you should do some more, like to stipple the texture in there. That would be really cool. And then, like, the main thing, really, is that this warm light that's being cast on her would create very cold shadows. Like, your shadows need to be like colder than this. This all seems rather warm. And like, this side of her face is, I think, like way too shadowed, to be brutally honest. Like, this, it doesn't look nearly as nice as the other side, which I think you could do with a bit more highlight here as well, because she's obviously that well lit. Like, and I know there's like angles to the face, but this is almost like a male shadow. Like, females have much, much softer like contrast in the face. It's lovely. You've got this variety, and like the gamut of color that you're using is great. But I think you've just gone a step too far with this side. It's too abrupt and it's too dark over too big an area. It looks great from this shot, but like from over here, I mean, a lot of this would be like the camera angle that's making it this dark. So you can see this dark occlusion shadow from the photo. So yeah, I'd actually brighten this side up a bit. It doesn't have to go as bright, obviously, as the other side, but it's a very, very ruddy skin tone anyway. So I think if you could cool the shadows off, that would make it sit a lot better. And what was the last thing I had? Oh yeah, nothing else really on the piece is that deeply shadowed. Like, anywhere on this side, it's just the skin that's that deeply shadowed. So this would be great if it was that dark, like in this jawline and like up behind this ear. But I don't think it needs to be this dark on like the whole side of her face. So yes, that concludes. Fantastic work on the eyes as well, I got to say. Really, really beautiful. Like, dark line, the makeup, like the double glint light that's in there, even like the individual strands in the eyebrows, all super duper stuff. So well done, Daniel. Right, back to you then, Matt.
Yeah, the face is definitely the standout piece. Like, essentially here, like, you put as much work or the most work there, which is good. I think like the eyes look amazing. I think they could maybe be slightly different in color from her eye makeup, because it's nice that they are like tied together. Like, she picked that color for herself, but like if her eyes were just slightly greener or slightly darker or just slightly different, that would kick it up like a few percent. Um, and then the NMM gold on her armband looks like amazingly good. And again, that looks sort of out of sorts with the lighting on the rest of her arm, which Jim was talking about. It doesn't make any sense that she'd have like this highlight here, but nothing there. And then the kind of grey fur coming out of the cloak doesn't look like it has nearly as much attention paid to it as anything else. And it's just fundamentally boring. It's just flat grey. So if you do anything else with that, I'd recommend it. And on the shadow side of the face, Jim is dead right. Like, why would she have like this is all shadow, but this is not? And her ear isn't in shadow, but like this part of her jaw is. And I know that the reason you did this, because this is something that, everyone runs into, where you're trying to create dynamic lighting from here, so you create really dark shadows here. But you have to then go back out because like the light's going to come and hit something. So like her jaw line along here, you need to highlight that up. And like Jim said, like keep the shadow for just under her cheekbone, so that you can't see it from like the face on angle. But you can when you turn it around, because especially for a competition piece, for a bust, like people are going to want to be able to look at it from every side and it makes sense. It's not like, something where you have like a background and the back of it could be mostly black or whatever. Yeah. And then also be careful of, this is a very high end thing as well, but you have like the shadow under her boobs is going basically to black, and then her chest is perfectly lit beside it, which looks good again because we're getting that idea that it's a rounded shape and it goes to dark. But then when you look at it closer, you're like, that's really weird. Like her skin is like touching there. Like why there should be a shadow cast actually by her cleavage onto her torso. So it should go back into a midtone and then back up to a highlight instead of just having the highlight right there. And then depending, yeah, you might want to consider the angles for using like I think the gold kind of fabric running down here. It doesn't look quite as good as the gold on her armband. And I think that's because you need the highlight to be broader on the top, the upward facing part. You have it kind of like wrapping around. I might stick a picture into Facebook to show you what I mean. That's very iffy though, because it looks perfect from some angles. So NMM can be very hard to pull off from like multiple angles. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. And you have just one very deep shadow, like where her hair goes down onto her golden fabric thing. The shadow under the hair is too thick. You should have like a very dark line separating those pieces, but it needs to be super duper thin. It's like infinitesimally thin because like the hair is like wrapping around like this, and it's just like the very little recessed bit that you can't see. And think about how thin a hair is. Like that highlight needs to be, or shadow needs to be as thin as a hair. But that's all very high level stuff because you're talking about doing like a bust for competition, and like female busts are harder. Busts where they're like from the navel up are harder. So there's always more you could do, but like the stuff you've done is like super super good work. So hope you get on well in the competition, and good happy painting in future. Cool. And Jim Kearney had a submission here, but it was late, so we'll look at it next month. Thanks a million to everyone for submitting. As always, it was our pleasure to review our video, your submissions. We hope you got something useful from this video. And if you're interested in submitting your own work to be reviewed, all you have to do is log on to Facebook and join the group. There's a couple of questions you have to answer, and there's a lot of other really helpful people on Painters Motivating Painters who give feedback all the time on work, and it's just a great space for ideas and growing. So thanks for watching.
No good for painting rental apartments though, like this guy's put in this morning. That's quite funny, I found.
Yeah. We might branch out into that at a later date.
No rentals, just minis.
Yeah.